Let me also welcome in Anantha Nageswaran, part-time member at the PMEAC. Anant, great to have you with us. Let's get a sense of the first set of reforms as well. In terms of a fiscal implication, absolutely minimal at this point. How does this fit in, according to you, with perhaps the overall package that we're still waiting for?
No, I have been greatly enthused by the reform measures coming from not only the union government, but also the state governments in the last couple of weeks. I think we should understand that some of the agricultural reforms that are being undertaken have been mentioned by many farm sector experts as the necessary reforms. Farmers must have the right to sell whenever, wherever, to whomsoever, at whatever price the market gives them. And that freedom is now being granted farmers by many state governments. That is one. As far as the union government is concerned, the Prime Minister in his remarks mentioned 4 L's, and yesterday's press conference took care of one of the L, being liquidity. And the fact that the fiscal, on-budget fiscal commitment is relatively small doesn't matter, because many Western governments package their fiscal proposals, including lots of deferrals and guarantees, etc., and made it appear bigger than what their actual on-budget spending was. So ultimately, the point is not so much about money spending, but about getting the economy to resume growth and facilitate transactions between economic participants. If this package of yesterday draws a line in the sand or puts a floor under many enterprises, provides them support and maintains financial stability, it is a great step forward.
Sure. And then there's been, some criticism that perhaps while some of the measures are fairly liberal and trying to address some of the problems at the grassroots, really, there hasn't as such been a bailout that's been announced, and that companies will continue to suffer even if we do manage just to push the ball down the line by a few months.
Well, first of all, when you go and watch a film, you don't come to the conclusion about the film after watching the first 10 minutes or half an hour if it is a 2-hour-long film. Similarly, we have one portion of the package. We have 3 more or 4 more announcements to go. And secondly, in a country like India, there will always be enough room to say X was done and Y was not done, etc. And everybody who is not happy with what they got will be the most vocal ones. That shouldn't dictate our judgment of what the government can do under the constraints of a starting fiscal situation, etc. I think we are on a good path, and that is my personal view.
Right. Also, Anant, we were just chatting with an expert, Nirmal Jain, as well, and given his understanding of NBFCs, he was just reiterating his thoughts on the package, the first tranche announced by the Finance Minister yesterday. And he said what's critical is to really see the time frame of money reaching MSMEs, which is going to be critical, and via which route, whether that's actually happening via NBFCs or banks, is going to be extremely critical to see. Your thoughts on the same?
I cannot disagree with what he had said. Ultimately, for any financial assistance or support, the proof of the pudding is when and how soon the intended assistance reaches the end beneficiary. And this is not a problem for India only, it is a problem for almost all the countries that are trying to assist enterprises and individuals who have been hurt. So the point is well taken, and I have a feeling that given the kind of data availability we have today, based on GST filings and many other Factories Act submissions, etc., it should be possible for the government assistance to reach them relatively faster than they would have in the years gone by.
Sure. Anand, I'm going to request you to stay with us. We have to take a commercial break, obligations there, and we'll come right back in 3 minutes and continue our discussion with you. Sub the 920, 9250 mark currently trade. It's roughly a 150-point decline that the Nifty futures are currently sitting at, and you've got a negative breath as well at your hands. Is the big boys like Infosys, Hindalco, which are weighing heavy on the index. Aside of that, you've also got a Tata Motors, a Bharat Forge, NTPC, which are in the red. You've got Siemens, Oro Pharma, IGL, and Muthoot Finance, which are somewhat lingering in the red as we speak. Still in conversation with Anantha Nageswaran. Anantha, we've talked about the first tranche, which was announced by the Finance Minister yesterday. The Prime Minister, day before in his speech, talked about the pillars of the economy, and he laid clear emphasis on economy being the first and most critical one. Where else do you think would be the sectors wherein we would hear some revival and some stimulus announced in the days to come by the Finance Minister?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't want to guess here. We all know which sectors are affected more. I mean, she already picked one, the real estate sector, and gave them some forbearance in terms of the commitments under the RERA Act, etc. So they are clearly focused on the most vulnerable ones. Of course, tourism, travel, hospitality, all those sectors are affected. And in general, if you then come one more level down, manufacturing requires more human contact, and also some services like travel and tourism, hospitality require human contact. But many other IT-enabled services, etc., can be, to some extent, relatively speaking, pursued from home as well. So they may not need that much of support. So it's a question of choosing, and I think many credit rating agencies like CRISIL, etc., have done their homework and come up with different sectors in different quadrants which are affected most and affected the least, and that provides the starting point template for the government to pick the sectors to whom it can provide a lifeline. More important thing to remember is, more than talking about specific sectors or industries, etc., it is also an opportunity to tell them that for the medium term, they have to up their game in terms of productivity, improve governance, etc. And that is what would make the package that much richer.
Okay, from from the kind of announcements made yesterday, Anant, and we were also expecting to hear more on some of the other pockets, labor, law. These are going to be critical, in order to even attract investment, which is again one of the government's prime mandates. Talk to us about some of the changes we can expect there when it comes to labor and land reforms, because these are going to be critical.
Government subjects, and the center, even back in 2014, as soon as it came to office, it tried to make some of these stringent and draconian provisions of the Land Acquisition Act 2013. It ran into political opposition, and now it has sort of left it to states, and some states have done so. And now, for example, the Karnataka government said farmers could directly sell their land to industries, etc. So clearly, the work, rightly or wrongly, is in the realm of state governments. So, for example, land use conversion is one of the most contentious areas in terms of the delays that it engenders, and also the scope for corruption, etc., and misuse. So that is an area for states to work on. As far as labor reforms are concerned, we know that the Parliamentary Standing Committee has more or less cleared most of the proposals on the consolidation of various labor laws into the 4 codes, and that's an important step if it can be reintroduced in the Parliament and passed. And more importantly, we should remember, policy making is not an exercise that is once done, it is cast in stone. The fact that some states are doing certain things and other states are not, in a way also gives us a very good laboratory for controlled experimentation. And we can fine-tune them and tweak them, as this government has done with respect to GST, with respect to many other measures. You accumulate experience and revise your actions. So I think instead of saying what the union government will be announcing on many of these areas, and I'm also waiting to see, as you are, we must remember that land, labor, health, education, etc., bulk of the action is with state governments.
Okay, so, when do you feel we'll start to really see that integration when it comes to the states as well? In terms of what has already been announced, again, as you said, a film plays out over a period of time. But when do you expect to start seeing the results of some of these measures?
Oh, well, that's a great question, but unfortunately, with economic policies, given multiple uncertainties, it is difficult to put a date and say by this quarter, etc., results will start showing up in macro indicators such as economic growth or employment generation. Because each player in the system, whether it is the government or the private entities, simply have to focus on what they need to do, but the outcomes aren't exactly in their control. It is as much philosophical as it is a practical aspect. So I think what the government is doing is what it needs to do. But the outcomes depend on multiple factors, including global trends and sentiment in the stock market, etc., and also private sector's own response functions. Therefore, one should say that in general, given the fact that the Prime Minister focused, compared to his earlier speeches, exclusively on the economy in his speech 2 nights ago, and then it is being followed up by concrete announcements over a period of 4 days or 5 days, I think sentiment will start to shift in India, and I would expect to see results coming from the second quarter of the fiscal and more certainly from the third quarter. But having said that, we are in a situation for which there is no precedent globally as well, and we should keep that in mind.
Sure. Anant, great to have you on the show and sharing your insights on what the package would do and could do going forward. Of course, the first tranche only announced yesterday. There is going to be a series of announcements that the finance minister is going to make.